Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Greet the Week. I'm Jan Moray, and I'm here with my co-host, Mona Duncan, and we have a couple other guests with us right now. So welcome, everybody, and welcome to those of you who watch this later on. And today's topic is possibilities, risk, or security. Life is a series of infinite possibilities balanced by calculated risks. Is it more both and rather than either or? So is there one answer to that, Mona?
No, there isn't. Which is pretty much what life is all about.
That's right.
Yeah. And so in looking at those, those infinite possibilities that are always there, and the calculated risk, and of course, the more we look at the risk that's involved, we can make it a little less risky or a little less hurtful. Looking at all of the different words that could be put inside instead of risk is danger or perilous or even terrifying.
Okay.
And as we can begin to put more thought into it, and I thought that really applied not only to living life every day, but especially with the holidays coming up, that no matter what particular, way of, this is the season of peace on earth.
Right.
And I saw a cartoon. Matter of fact, it was last year. I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. And it was in the
hold
Sunday
it up higher.
Okay.
You want to still see it? Okay. All right.
I want you to see it, and then I want to explain it to you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So
right.
you see it. Mm-hmm. So it's a school, and it was the Luann, December of 2019. And anyway, she wrote on the board, "Merry Christmas." And so a student comes in and says, "Oh yeah, right. Well, we celebrate Hanukkah." So she writes down, "Happy Hanukkah." And another child comes in and says, "Well, what about Kwanzaa?" And another one says, I'm not familiar with it all, Omasaka. And so she writes that down. And somebody comes in and says, "Well, just say, but I'm Muslim." And another one comes in and says, "Well, just put happy holidays." And so she starts writing and writing and writing all the different things that's celebrated through the month of December. And down at the bottom, she just takes this big, huge marker, and in great big letters, she just puts out the word peace.
Okay.
And it puts, a couple of the exclamation points after it. And I found that very interesting. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking of world situation today, not only pandemic, but everything else that's kind of crisis mode, and how that there is calculated risk, but we can find peace in the midst of it. And that no matter what our belief system is, and looking at for the holiday season, it is a holiday season. And I know some people have been somewhat maybe put off by saying holiday, but you know what, that's just another form of holy day.
Well, yes.
And it's a reverence. It has a sacredness to it that is honoring our heritage, whatever that may be. And as we've looked before, we're really more alike than we are different, no matter where we come from.
Absolutely. Well, my husband and I had that discussion the other day, because he was, talking about different ethnicities and races and religions and things. And I said, well, we're all just people. We're all the same species. So what does it matter what color we are, what religion we believe in, where we came from? We're human, and we all have the same needs, and we all need people, and let's have peace. I think that's a great word for this time of year, to get together with people, and or not, depending on what you believe, and just let's be happy. Let's get along. Let's do things together.
Right. And if not happy, at least peaceful happy.
Correct. Yeah.
And I was thinking about, getting together for the holidays, whether it was Thanksgiving or whatever, whether it's a birthday coming up or an anniversary or just a celebration. it may be more difficult, and especially if there's a lot of loss, whether that is loss of job or loss of family or an individual, that can really make a celebration not so celebratory. But in the midst of all that, how that we can begin to find some kind of a peace. And I was
How does
talking.
gratitude fit into that, into having that kind of peace? How important is gratitude to
Well, it's
find that spot?
paramount.
Okay.
It is paramount, absolutely paramount. I don't know that we can have peace if we don't have a measure of gratitude.
Yeah.
And again, whether that is for current circumstances, what is this difficult time? How is it strengthening my muscle? How am I becoming stronger in spite of? And I don't mean that ugly, hateful. I mean, regardless of, because sometimes it is that going against the pressure that builds the muscle, that builds the strength. And it's looking at the fact of being thankful for it, that these people were in our life, or that this person was in our life, and seeing how that, their spirit is still there.
Right.
That memory is still there. And
the recipe that they used to make is still there, and you can
well,
still make it.
It may not be quite as good. It may not be
That's
the
right.
same, but it's kind of a memorial to, and to begin to have a little peace with that. So, last week we talked being D-Day, and talked about a little bit about, I mentioned the Arizona, where we talked about that, and that the NCIS, and I looked it up. I went back and found that and wrote down exactly what he had said to the people. And I wanted to repeat that because I thought it was so powerful. The guy took ashes of a veteran back to be buried at the Arizona. And as he was he talked with his crew of people that he was leaving behind as he was taking the trip out to the Pearl Harbor. And he said, I want to tell you something about Joe. And Joe was the veteran. And he said, but I'm also telling you something about me. When I was in Kuwait, before that, I was different. But it took something away from me. I thought of my girls. Maybe they wouldn't recognize me. Maybe there wouldn't be enough of me for them to have, because the best of me was gone. You come home, you're like half a person. The other half of you is still back there, where at least it made sense, where in all of the bullets and the blood and the chaos, you knew what mattered. You knew the guy next to you was willing to die for you, and you were willing to die for him. You looked around, and he broke up, and he calmed himself, and he said, it shouldn't take a war to make the world simple.
Yeah.
And then he was talking with his cohorts, and he said, do you know why Joe wanted to go back? Having the ashes in the back. The point is, we saved each other, all of us. And he wanted to be with his brothers. He wanted to be with family. He wanted to go home. And so I was thinking, with this risk and possibilities and everything, the thing of it is we're all looking for home. We're all looking for home. And again, whether it's that loved one that's no longer there, we're looking for home. And I pulled out an article that I'd written before, because I wanted, sometimes I can think about things and say it more succinctly when I've had time to think about it. And anyway, I want to share an article that I wrote, and it was, I was talking about good old golden rules day, back when, school days, and talked about my growing up and being reared in West Virginia. Anyway, civics, oh, we lived it. Whether it was barn building or hog killing, people showed up with tools and food in hand. Why? Because we were family, we were community. Election day, the schoolhouse was all decked out in red, white, and blue bunting. and it became the hub of community activity. The school bus, plus a few private vehicles, scoured to the ends of the county, providing travel so everyone would be able to perform their civic duty. Decoration Day produced a flurry of activity, cleaning cemeteries around the community and paying homage to our local world citizen heroes. Our soldiers kept us safe at home while putting themselves in harm's way to protect our unknown neighbors over there. And looking at the fact that no matter what we're doing, looking for that peace, we're looking for home. We're looking for home. We're looking for family. We're looking for community.
Do you think we can create that home, or we just look for it, try to find it out somewhere, or do what hand do we have in creating that home for ourselves?
Well, we're so creative, more creative than we give ourselves credit for.
Well, true.
And I think of who was the guy that wrote, well, I don't know, but I do remember what he said. He said, the mind is its own place, and of itself can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven.
Yeah.
And that was in Paradise Lost. Who wrote that? Anyway, it was in Paradise Lost.
Okay.
The mind is its own place, and it is. It is. And we can make things, and I say this as, I don't know even what to put, just to realize that I'm not talking about the fact that it doesn't hurt. I'm not talking about the fact that there's not great loss, that there's great regret. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we have the possibility to look back at, and even those regrets, we can look at the fact that I'm not who I was then, and begin to look at how that we can. Richard Nyberg, the same one that wrote the Serenity Prayer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He wrote a book called Moral Man and an Immoral Society. And he looked at the fact that individuals in and of themselves are pretty moral. And they often make very selfless choices because we're moral individuals. It's kind of deep down inside. But larger groupings like institutions and nations are selfish, and all they're looking at is self-interest. And because you get a bunch of moral people together and you look at having power and social momentum, and they begin to make laws and do actions and see things in a way that coerces individuals to behave in immoral ways.
Well, yeah, you see somebody doing something, and especially if they're gaining something, being benefited, it's like, well, I don't want to get left out, and it's easy to fall into that.
Right. And whether that's riots or whether that's caroling.
Right.
If someone's going up and down the street and they're singing joy to the world or peace on earth, you just kind of have to join in with them.
Yeah.
And but that happens whether it, again, talking about whether it's the rioting, whether it is the egging on. I mean, deep down inside and working with the prisoners, how many times would they blame someone else? But I just got in with the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
And my response to that was, I can see how you would see that, and yeah, because other people do influence us. But the bottom line is, are you aware of the fact that they're saying the same thing because you were part of that bad crowd they got into?
Yeah, they may be saying the same thing about you as what you're saying about them.
Yeah. It was that guy that I hung around with. And the thing of it is that because our body is so designed to let us know when we are making an error, that as we begin to look at it, if you can say yes to something and walk away from it and you don't have a regret, then your body's saying, okay, that was okay to
Yeah.
say yes to that.
Right. Because you know, your body tells you when you're doing something that you're not real sure about.
Whether it is your mind, but more importantly, your heart, your wisdom heart, it's saying, oh, that wasn't such a good thing to say
Yeah.
yes to. Or
Yeah.
sometimes that wasn't a good thing to say no to. Go back and say, okay, I changed my mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And so can we create peace? Yes, we can. And one of the pieces that we can begin to create is to looking at the fact that, yes, I made an error, but that the worst thing we ever did, does not take away our worth and value as a human being.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And as we can recognize that and say, okay, you know, I risked something and it wasn't too calculated and that, and begin to say, but I'm not that way.
Right. It's something
And
I maybe had to do. And after I did it, my body's telling me, wrong direction.
yeah. And following up on D-Day and World War II and all that kind of stuff, you know, and I mean, at the heart of that was stepping in to protect humanity as a whole. You know, that people were being wronged, and do what you can without harming others. And sometimes even the law is, you know, is very much put into place that if you do harm someone else in the protection of your family, that it can become, not that it's ever a-okay, but it's better than letting harm keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Mm.
And it's finding that peace.
And looking for that peace.
Yeah. And the trying to make a perfect society, well, that's just an impossibility.
Right. Because who's to define what perfect is?
Exactly.
And I see this note that Jerry put in the chat from several minutes ago saying, I have a theory. Maybe God gave us COVID to show the universality of all humans. We are more alike than different, regardless of different religions, races, languages, beliefs, etc. Yes, we are definitely more alike. And let's look for that thing that is a lot that we have that's alike, instead of focusing on the things that are different about us. It's so easy to point out those differences, but we're all still susceptible to a virus. We all can get stopped in our tracks. No matter how much money we have, no matter where we're from, no matter what we do, it can still affect us.
Yeah.
And I do believe that trauma does bring people together. When you go through a tough time and you are successful, you make it through, you survive. You're a survivor. You get through it, and you might have a few battle scars along the way, but you experienced it together and you did it together. You know, which is like that man Joe wanting to go back to the Arizona. You know, that was a very traumatic experience, and he still felt connected to it.
A kinship, the family. That was my family.
Yeah.
That was my band of brothers.
Yeah.
That was people that we knew we were fighting for a cause, and it was a right cause.
Yeah.
To help protect humanity as a whole. And that perfection, you know, that's just like anything that is taken to extreme becomes an extreme.
Yeah.
And if we look at perfection, well, perfect is just right for the stage of development. And if we go for perfection and we get too far, then we see every teaching, everything is either 100% right or 100% wrong.
Oh, that's a dangerous place to be.
That's extreme. Yeah, that's that terrifying place to be.
Yes.
Yes, very dangerous, very dangerous. So it's coming kind of middle ground. It's getting a little thing called grace that Mike Dooley in one of his books that I read, he said, primitive societies live by the rule of might, you know.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Because that's all they know.
Right.
Because I mean, if you look at the animal kingdom, that's how they do it there. You can see
Yeah.
them pushing each other around, and the one who's has the most power wins.
Exactly. And the marauding and all that kind of stuff. So primitive societies live by the rule of might. Advanced societies live by the rule of law,
Okay.
you know. And in the rule of might, living by the rule of might, it's the strong prevail. If you're stronger than,
Mhm.
then you'll prevail over the weaker. And then advanced societies live by the rule of law. And it gets to be the point that if you're abiding by the right law, it becomes the rule of privilege.
Okay.
That enlightened societies, and that's definitely where I want to get to be,
Yeah.
is to be more enlightened. Enlightened societies live by the rule of love,
Mm.
or the rule of caring, or the rule, going back up to, what Nyberg said, going back up to being a moral person,
Yeah.
having a humanity about you, that
And being
everyone,
kind.
being kind, and in that rule of love, everyone is lifted higher. Because
Right.
we're not looking back that I'm more privileged than you are, or shrinking back because you're more privileged than I am, or that the mighty, the one more powerful than or less powerful than. It's beginning to look on more of an even keel.
So do you look at love as like your measure of wealth and success?
Oh, yes, yes,
And
yes,
and
yes.
so when you're trying to make people equal, you're talking about people having equal opportunities, is the measure of whether you truly have achieved that. To what level of love have you achieved? What important people do you have in your life, and how do you feel about what's going on, where you belong, as opposed to counting how much money you have, or how big a house you have, or how much stuff you have.
Exactly, exactly. And it's the brotherly love. It's the human
Yeah,
love.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the more we realize it, and the more we give it, and equally true, the more we receive it, we begin to realize,
Yes,
hey, this is
yeah.
getting up to that agape divinity love. Just to love people, and to realize that in difficult times there is love there, and receive it. Give it to yourself, if nothing else, because what? Love your neighbors, you love yourself. Well, let's start off with loving ourselves,
Right.
and realizing those scars, those flaws. And that's not to just say they don't matter, because those flaws do matter. Sometimes they can be what really makes us a doer and achiever. But do it in love, do it in kindness. Don't tromp on anyone else in
Yeah.
order to get there.
Bring others up with you.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And so over the holidays that are here upon us, and handling grief, I thought we need to kind of bring in a little bit of handling grief there, the missing people. I have a friend that I worked with. We did, well, anyway, we worked together in a little project, and her daughter had been hit. It was in a car,
Mm.
not a wreck, but a crash. Not an accident, but a crash, because all conditions were met for it to happen. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, was
Okay.
in a
All
car
right. I got
wreck.
it.
A car wreck. She was in a car wreck. She was coming home late one night, and she was crashed into by a drunk driver,
Mm.
and she was killed.
Mm.
And tragic, tragic, tragic. And it was 8 years later, and this mom was, still grieving, definitely, but she had learned to find peace in the midst of it. And I never will forget one of the things that she was telling me, that there was a little thing that the daughter had given her dad that sat on, now this this was several years ago, and it was 8 years ago at the time she was telling me this.
Okay.
Okay. But anyway, there was a little ornament, a little something, I don't even remember what it was, that her daughter had given her dad.
Okay.
And he had set it on his nightstand. And all of that time later, it had never been touched. Not even to be moved to dust around it.
Mm.
Maybe other things on the desk had been, because that became a sacred momentum to her, to
Yeah.
both of them, you know, that it was
Right.
there, the daughter had
Right.
put it there. And she said that someone had said to her, "You are not the only heartbroken parent in the world. The pain of loss is not yours alone. Disappointment and loss is a part of the human condition."
Yeah.
And recognizing that, and she said that although someone said that to her, she didn't really think about it until she was sitting on the side of the bed and looking at that little ornament that the daughter had given her dad. And she said she just started bawling, just
Yeah.
crying.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it's okay, just cry it out.
It is okay. There's nothing wrong with crying. It's a release. It's a great release. Even though people
Yeah.
around you and even yourself will feel uncomfortable when you're crying. It's don't hold it back.
Yeah.
Read
And
that.
she said she saw how that she had been so caught up in her own emotions
Yeah.
that she couldn't appreciate the beauty, that all she was looking at was my needs, my wants, my wanting to harm someone else for having harmed me.
Mm.
And
Mm.
although that is definitely tragic, she said all of a sudden, she said she felt a release, and you know, she didn't know where it came from.
Mm.
But it was recognizing the fact that it goes back to, can we imagine, can we create our own world? To a
Yeah.
large degree,
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah.
To a very large degree. And so those things that are so weighing us down, whether it is grief, whether it is a hate of some kind, whether it is an anger of some, you know, a grudge of some kind, find a peace for yourself.
Yeah.
By just, if you can't do anything about it, and you know, just
Well,
let it be.
At least maybe to talk about it, if you can find somebody who's safe, that you feel like you can at least talk about it and get it out in the open, because just letting it mull around in your head doesn't work.
Right, or however it takes to at least let the pressure off.
Yeah.
Whether it is through a cry, whether it's through yelling, screaming, cursing, you know, whether it's through hitting something, but never a person, you know,
Right.
get a punching bag, go do something physical to kind of get it out. And then let yourself know that you're letting it out. It's not, you know, it's not sucking it up later. It's sucking it up in a different way. It's sucking it up in a fresh air way.
Yeah.
Not in a, and it's realizing that we're always looking for family. We're always looking for home. And so make that home for yourself. Make that peace for yourself.
And be the kind of person that you're looking for, so that you attract people that you want to be in your home, that you want to be part of your group.
Right. And realize that, you know, with those that are gone, as I think, you know, of the people in my life that I've lost,
Right.
especially around Christmas, especially when the newer it is, like my sister and
Yeah.
my dad died on Christmas Day. And anyway,
So did
those kind
mine.
of
I think we've
things.
had that conversation before. Yeah, my father died on Christmas Day also. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
And to begin to give myself peace and to incorporate that peace, and you know, is that from my point of view, they're in God's arms, but they're still in my heart.
Absolutely. They never leave your heart. They never ever go away.
Yeah.
You don't want them to go away.
Right. And, you know, as we release those things, really release them, we can talk about those oddities and the irritants and laugh about
That's
it.
right. That's right.
Because we realized that there was so much love there.
Yeah. And that's what made them who
regardless.
they are. You know, those are the things you remember. And yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess that's the way to end our talk today.
That's right. No, that's a good way to end for today. And we will be back again for the next 2 weeks for another edition of Greet the Week. And we hope to see everybody there. Bye-bye.